The mess hall at Fort Horizon Naval Base roared with the usual chaos of 200 voices competing for dominance. Metal trays clattered against tables, boots scuffed linoleum floors. Somewhere near the far wall, a group of recruits argued over college football rankings with the intensity of men who had nothing else to care about. Lieutenant Aria Calder sat alone at a corner table, her posture straight despite the exhaustion that lived in her bones. She ate methodically, fork moving from tray to mouth in measured intervals. Her uniform was crisp, her name tape visible, her seal trident catching the fluorescent light when she shifted. Most people in the room didn't notice her. That was how she preferred it. 3 men did notice. Jackson Reed led the approach, his swagger preceding him like cologne. At 6'2", with the build of someone who spent more time in the weight room than the classroom, he carried himself like someone who had never been told no. Cole Maddox followed, thick-necked and empty-eyed, the kind of muscle that came without the brain to control it. Behind them, Ty Avery trailed with visible reluctance, younger than the others by maybe 2 years, his conscience still intact enough to cause discomfort. They formed a semicircle around her table. Jackson said, his voice carrying that particular tone men use when they think charm is the same as threat, that she looked a little lost, and this section was usually for actual operators. Aria didn't look up. She finished chewing, swallowed, took a sip of water. Only then did her eyes rise to meet his. No anger, no fear, just flat assessment, the kind a predator gives prey before deciding whether it's worth the energy. She told him quietly that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Her voice was controlled. Final. Cole laughed, the sound ugly and forced. He announced loudly that she thought she belonged here. Jackson leaned forward, one hand coming down on the table near her tray. Not touching her, not yet, just establishing territory. His fingers brushed her wrist. The room didn't go silent. That only happens in movies. But something in the air shifted, the way it does right before lightning strikes. Aria moved. One moment Jackson's hand was on the table. The next, his wrist was locked in her grip, rotated at an angle that sent white-hot pain shooting up his arm. She stood in a single fluid motion, her other hand catching his elbow, torquing it backward. His body followed the joint, chest slamming into the table as she guided him down with surgical precision. Cole lunged. Mistake. She sidestepped, used his momentum against him, drove her knee into his solar plexus, hard enough to empty his lungs. As he doubled over, she caught the back of his head and introduced it to the table edge. Not hard enough to cause serious damage, just hard enough. Ty raised his hands, backing up, saying he didn't mean any trouble. She already had the contraband knife. It had been in Cole's cargo pocket, a 3-inch folding blade that violated about 6 different base regulations. Now it sat open in her palm, held loosely, professionally, not threatening, just present. 45 seconds, maybe less. The mess hall noticed now. Conversations died in ripples, attention focusing like a lens. Footsteps approached, measured and unhurried. Lieutenant Commander Grant Stevens, OIC of Training Operations, stopped at the edge of the scene. He took in the tableau with the weary expression of a man who had seen this movie before and knew how it ended. He addressed her formally by rank and name. Not a question, just acknowledgement. She closed the knife, set it on the table, released Jackson's wrist. He scrambled backward, cradling his arm, face red with rage and humiliation. She responded with equal formality. Stevens looked at the 3 recruits and suggested they report to medical. After that, Master Chief Hale would be expecting them in his office. His eyes moved to the knife, noting they should bring an explanation for that. They left, Jackson shooting poisonous looks over his shoulder. The room slowly returned to its previous noise level, though eyes still tracked Aria as she sat back down and resumed eating. Stevens remained. He observed that they would make trouble. She replied that they already did. Fair point, he said. Then he told her Master Chief Hale wanted to see her at 2,100 hours. She nodded. Stevens left. Aria finished her meal in silence, aware of the eyes on her, unconcerned by them. This wasn't her first posting, where being competent while female was treated as an act of aggression. It wouldn't be her last. The thought that crossed her mind as she cleared her tray. At least here, the hostility was honest. Master Chief Rowan Hale's office existed in a state of organized chaos. Maps covered one wall, some current, some dating back to conflicts most people had forgotten. Photos lined another. Teams of men in desert gear, boat crews in black water, faces young and serious and long since scattered to the four corners of the world or deeper into the earth. He sat behind a desk that looked like it had survived at least 3 wars, reading a file when she knocked. He told her to enter. Aria stepped inside, came to attention. He didn't look up immediately, just turned a page, eyes scanning lines she couldn't read from this distance. When he finally did look up, what struck her was the age in his eyes. Not his physical age, though he had to be pushing 60. The other kind, the kind that comes from seeing things that stay with you. He told her to be at ease, then closed the file and asked if it was self-defense. She confirmed it was. He noted it was 3-on-1, and she walked away without a scratch while they didn't. After a pause, he said it was impressive. She said nothing. Waiting. He stood, walked to the window. Outside, the training compound stretched into darkness. He observed this was her 3rd posting in 4 years, each time reassigned because she made someone uncomfortable, usually someone with more rank and less skill. She confirmed this was accurate. He turned to face her and told her they sent her here thinking it was punishment, instructor duty, away from operational teams, but he had requested her specifically. That surprised her. She kept it off her face. He explained that he'd been following her career. Fallujah, Kandahar, that mess in Yemen that officially never happened. His eyes held hers as he stated she was one of the best operators he'd seen in 30 years, and he'd seen the best. She thanked him formally. He clarified he wasn't complimenting her but stating fact. He returned to his desk but didn't sit. He was going to test her like he would any SEAL in the field, not because he doubted her abilities, but because he needed to know if she was ready for what was coming. She assured him she was always ready. Something moved behind his eyes. Memory, maybe. Pain, certainly. He dismissed her. She saluted, turned to leave. He called her rank. She stopped. He told her to watch her back. Not everyone here wanted to see her succeed. She replied that she never assumed they did. He nodded. She left. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Rowan Hale stood at that window for another hour after she left, staring into darkness, seeing ghosts. One ghost in particular. His daughter had stood the same way Aria did. Same posture, same control, same fire buried deep where it couldn't be easily seen. Lysa had been 26 when they killed her. The desert at night carried its own kind of silence, broken only by distant generators and the occasional crackle of radio traffic. Lieutenant Lysa Hale adjusted her night vision goggles, scanning the compound below their observation position. Her spotter whispered about movement in the northwest corner. She saw them, 6 men, not in uniform, carrying civilian villagers at gunpoint toward a drainage ditch. Her blood went cold. She murmured that these were contractor teams, the ones Drace had authorized. She pulled out her camera, started recording. As a Navy corpsman attached to a SEAL reconnaissance element, she wasn't supposed to be here, but intelligence had indicated civilian casualties in this sector, and someone needed to document it. What she captured in the next 4 minutes would have ended careers, triggered investigations, possibly changed the course of the war. Execution-style killings. 12 civilians. 3 contractors laughing while they did it. She was still filming when the bullet hit. The impact spun her sideways, pain exploding through her chest. Her spotter screamed into the radio, calling for medevac. But she could already feel the wet heat spreading, knew with clinical detachment that the bullet had found something vital. Rowan reached her position within 3 minutes, running through hostile fire like death itself couldn't touch him. He gathered her in his arms, her blood soaking into his uniform. She whispered to her father, struggling to breathe, that the camera was in her vest pocket and they needed to see. He told her not to talk, to save her strength. She insisted it wasn't insurgents. Blood bubbled at her lips as she said it came from a friendly position. Drace knew. He had ordered it. Her eyes went unfocused. The last breath rattled out of her. Rowan held his daughter's body as artillery shells screamed overhead, as his team laid down covering fire, as the world ended around him in fire and cordite and loss that would never heal. He found the camera later. It was gone when he checked again, along with the official after-action report. The investigation ruled her death as hostile fire. Case closed. Admiral Victor Drace attended the funeral, shook Rowan's hand, said all the right words. Rowan had been searching for proof ever since. 3 weeks into her assignment at Fort Horizon, Aria returned to her quarters to find a manila envelope on her bunk. No address, no marking, just the envelope, crisp and anonymous. She checked the door. Locked when she left, locked when she returned. Someone with access, then someone with clearance. She opened it carefully, aware that paranoia in her line of work wasn't a character flaw but a survival trait. Inside were 3 documents. The first was an official casualty report for Lieutenant Lisa Marie Hale, killed in action, Sundar Province, hostile fire. The second was a ballistics report, classified, showing the round that killed her came from an M110 semi-automatic sniper rifle. American weapon. Friendly fire, possibly accidental. The third document contradicted both. A medical examiner's preliminary assessment, unsigned, showing entry angle inconsistent with either hostile or accidental friendly fire. Trajectory suggested deliberate targeting from an elevated friendly position. Attached to this was a handwritten note on unlined paper stating that she knew too much, they buried her and the evidence, and now they were watching Aria with the same pattern but a different target. The note was signed with initials. Aria read everything twice, memorized what mattered, then burned the documents in her sink and flushed the ashes. The note she kept hidden in a place no one would think to look. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in darkness, running scenarios, evaluating threats, trying to understand why Master Chief Hale would risk this kind of communication. The answer came at 0300, because he was out of options. Because whatever conspiracy had killed his daughter was still active. Because Aria was either the solution or the next casualty. She got up, pulled on running gear, and ran 8 miles through the dark. By the time she returned, sweating and centered, she had decided. If they wanted a target, she'd give them one. But she wouldn't go down easy. The orders came down 6 weeks later, crisp and official and completely routine on the surface. Lieutenant Aria Calder, reassigned to SEAL Team Delta 9 for a classified operation in the Arvani Ridge region. Duration, 2 weeks. Mission parameters, reconnaissance and target assessment. Commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Vance Rourke. She knew Rourke by reputation. Old school operator, competent, but with opinions about women in combat that he didn't bother hiding. Not ideal, but she'd worked with worse. What bothered her were the attachments. Satellite imagery that didn't match current intelligence reports. Route planning that violated standard operating procedures. Authorization signatures that should have required Joint Command approval, but only showed one name, Admiral Victor Drace. She found Rowan in the armory, inspecting weapons with the care of someone who understood that maintenance was the difference between life and death. She requested to speak with him formally. He glanced up, read something in her expression, jerked his head toward a supply room in the back. They entered, and he closed the door. He stated that she got deployment orders, not a question. She confirmed it was Arvani Ridge, and noted the operational plan had inconsistencies. His jaw tightened. He asked to see the documents. She handed him the folder. He went through it page by page, his expression growing darker with each document. Finally, he said this was Lisa all over again. Bad intel, compromised route planning, single authorizing officer. He looked at her and stated that if she went, they would try to kill her the same way they killed Lisa. She acknowledged that she knew. He said she could refuse with medical reasons or a family emergency, and he would back whatever story she needed. She asked what would happen then. They would try again in 6 months or a year, or move on to the next operator who got too close. She shook her head, saying she wasn't spending the rest of her career looking over her shoulder. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that went beyond rank. He told her Lisa had said something similar right before she volunteered for the reconnaissance that got her killed. Aria stated she wasn't his daughter. He agreed but said she was the closest thing to her he'd seen in 12 years. Same fire, same principles. Same stubborn refusal to walk away from a fight. His eyes held hers as he explained he lost Lisa because he didn't do enough and wouldn't make that mistake twice. She asked what he was proposing. He pulled a radio from his gear bag, handed it to her. Military grade, encrypted, unauthorized. He explained it was a backup frequency with triangulated satellite uplink. If things went sideways, she should use this. He would have assets standing by. She took the radio, tested the weight, and noted this was career-ending if anyone found out. He replied that his career ended 12 years ago when they put his daughter in the ground and called it justice. Hers would end when she stopped fighting. He met her eyes, stating that if she was going into the monster's den, at least she should take a weapon he didn't know about. She nodded. They didn't shake hands, didn't need to. Some understandings go deeper than gesture. 3 days later, she boarded the transport helicopter heading east. The rest of Delta 9 gave her the standard new operator treatment, professional courtesy. With an undercurrent of skepticism, Rourke's greeting was cordial and cold. None of them knew they were already dead. They just hadn't stopped moving yet. The helicopter dropped them 2 clicks from the target at 0200 hours. 8 operators, full kit, moving through terrain that should have matched their satellite imagery but didn't. Aria noticed first. The ridge that should have been on their western flank was 300 meters further out. The dried riverbed marked on their maps was running with water. Small differences, but in her world, small differences got people killed. She keyed her mic, reporting that terrain didn't match briefing imagery. Rourke's response was terse, noted, continue to objective. They reached the compound at 0315. It sat in a shallow valley, exactly where intelligence said it would be, but wrong. All wrong. The windows were dark, but intact. No blast damage. No signs of the insurgent activity that justified this raid. The vehicles in the courtyard were civilian models, not the technical trucks their brief had described. Aria felt ice forming in her gut. She requested they hold position and reassess. Rourke denied the request. They had their orders. Entry team was up. 4 SEALs moved toward the main entrance. Aria stayed with the support element, scanning rooflines, windows, anywhere a threat might emerge. The entry team breached. Cleared the first room. Moved to the second. That's when the world exploded. RPG fire from 3 positions simultaneously. Heavy machine gun fire from elevated positions. Mortars. Walking up from the south. The compound wasn't their objective, it was the bait. The whole valley was a kill zone. And they'd walked right into it. Rourke took shrapnel in the first 30 seconds, went down hard. Morrison, the youngest operator, started to freeze. Aria grabbed him, hauled him behind cover as rounds chewed up the ground where he'd been standing. She called out contact left, PKM emplacement at 200 meters. She returned fire, controlled bursts, keeping the gunner's head down while the team regrouped. Someone was screaming into the radio, calling for close air support that would take 20 minutes minimum to arrive. They didn't have 20 minutes. Aria crawled to where Rourke lay. His leg was mangled, face sheet white. She told him they needed to move immediately. He grabbed her vest and said the radio was jammed. Someone knew they were coming. She acknowledged this and asked if he could move. He said not fast enough. She stated firmly that she didn't care. They would move together or die together. She looked at the remaining team. 7 still combat effective, 2 wounded, 1 KIA. She called out instructions. Rally point was the stone farmhouse 400 meters northeast. They would move in 2 groups with suppressing fire on her mark. She didn't ask for Rourke's permission to take command. In that moment, rank meant nothing. Survival meant everything. They moved. Aria carrying 90 kilograms of wounded officer through fire that should have killed them all. Morrison and Chen laying down cover. The others providing security, returning fire, moving like the professionals they were. They reached the farmhouse. Barely. Chen took a round through the shoulder. Miller's kit was shredded, but they were alive. Aria set Rourke down, checked his wounds. Bad, but survivable if they got him out soon. She pulled out the unauthorized radio Rowan had given her. She transmitted. Broken arrow. This is Calder. Ambush confirmed. Intel was compromised. Position is hot. Request immediate extract. Static. Then Rowan's voice, controlled despite what he must be feeling. He copied Broken Arrow and confirmed assets were inbound. They should hold position. ETA 45 minutes. 45 minutes. They'd be lucky to last 15. But Aria didn't survive 3 combat deployments by being lucky. She survived by being better than the people trying to kill her. Time to prove it again. The farmhouse had 3 rooms, stone walls 2 feet thick, and exactly 4 defensive positions worth holding. Aria surveyed their resources. Limited ammunition, 2 casualties, no air support, and an enemy force that knew exactly where they were. The math wasn't good. She pulled Morrison aside. Kid was 19, fresh from training, probably wondering why he ever thought being a SEAL was a good idea. She pointed out the window in the northeast corner and told him about the sniper on the ridge who had taken 3 shots during their move. Good shooter, but rushing. Morrison was to wait until the sniper fired again, count to 3, then put 1 round center mass on the muzzle flash. Morrison started to say he'd never done this before. She cut him off, saying he had now. Breathe, squeeze, follow through, just like training. The first assault came 10 minutes later. 20 fighters, no tactics, just volume of fire hoping to overwhelm them. The SEALs cut them apart with disciplined shooting, making every round count. Morrison got his sniper. Clean hit. The kid was shaking afterward, but he'd done it. The second assault was smarter, suppressing fire from 2 positions while a maneuver element tried to flank. Miller spotted them, called it out. Chen, wounded shoulder and all, held the angle until they broke off. 20 minutes gone, water running low, ammunition lower. Rourke, lucid despite the blood loss, caught Aria's eye and asked if this was a setup from the start. She confirmed it was. He stated that someone sold them out. She agreed it was someone very high up the chain. He was quiet for a moment, then said if she got them out of this, he would testify to whatever she needed. She agreed to the deal. The third assault never came. Instead, someone started talking through a loudspeaker in accented English, announcing they were surrounded and offering them prisoner of war treatment if they surrendered. Miller snorted, noting sarcastically that prisoner treatment always worked out great. But Aria was thinking. They weren't being rushed. The enemy had them pinned, could afford to wait. Unless they couldn't. Unless they were on a timeline too. She grabbed Morrison and asked what he saw at the equipment they passed on the way in. He looked confused at first. She pressed him about the staging area 500 meters south. Weapons, vehicles, think. He closed his eyes, ran through the memory, then reported technical trucks and heavy weapons. It looked like they were preparing for movement, not defense. She smiled, cold, predatory. They weren't trying to kill them. They were trying to pin them until they could sanitize this whole area and leave, which meant their command element was close, which meant they could hurt them. Rourke stared at her incredulously. She wanted to counterattack when they were down to 40 rounds per man. She replied exactly. The enemy thought they were beaten. Time to show them different. Dawn came fast in the Arvani Ridge, gold bleeding into dark blue. Aria used the changing light, the enemy's shift rotation, the moment when exhaustion and confidence create gaps. She took 6 operators, left Morrison and Williams with the wounded, moved through a drainage ditch that didn't exist on their maps but was perfect for concealment. The enemy command post sat in a cluster of buildings 400 meters from the farmhouse, 2 guards outside. Minimal security because they thought the Americans were contained. Mistake. Miller took the first guard. Chen, wounded shoulder and all, took the second. Both suppressed shots, both clean. The team moved through the entrance like smoke. Inside, chaos in slow motion. 6 men around maps and radio equipment, turning in surprise. Aria's team fired with mechanical precision. Center mass, controlled pairs, no hesitation. 90 seconds, from breach to clear. Chen secured the radio. Miller grabbed the maps. Aria went straight for the man in the corner, the one whose bearing screamed leader even as he reached for a sidearm. She was faster, disarmed him, put him on the ground, zip-tied his hands before he could process what happened. She asked if he spoke English. He spat. She pulled a laptop from the desk, still open, still logged in, encrypted, but running. She asked Chen if he could pull data from it. Chen said to give him 2 minutes. Outside, gunfire erupted as the enemy realized what happened. Aria noted they didn't have 2 minutes. Chen replied to make them. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Aria moved to the window, started coordinating fire positions. The rest of Delta 9 knew their jobs. They held the approaches, bought time with precision shooting and pure stubbornness. Chen announced he had it and yanked a thumb drive free. 20 years of transactions, arms deals, coordination logs, payment records. He stared at the screen in shock, noting that half these payments originated from Pentagon accounts. Aria felt ice and fire mix in her chest. She ordered them to grab everything and move. They extracted through the back, covered by smoke grenades and suppressing fire. The enemy was disorganized now, leadership decapitated, unsure whether to pursue or defend. Aria's radio crackled. Rowan's voice, strained, reported extract was wheels up in 2 minutes at the southwest clearing, 200 meters from their position. She acknowledged and said they were on the way. They ran, carrying their wounded, protecting their prisoner, clutching evidence that would burn down careers and possibly change everything. The helicopter appeared like salvation, unmarked, flying low. They loaded fast, weapons facing out until the last operator was aboard. As they lifted off, Aria looked down at the compound. The farmhouse, the command post. 12 hours ago, this was supposed to be her grave. Instead, she was going home with proof. They arrested her the moment the helicopter touched down at Fort Horizon. JAG officers, stone-faced, reading charges that sounded rehearsed. Unauthorized radio use, violation of operational security, deviation from mission parameters. They separated her from the team, confiscated her gear, escorted her to a holding room that was technically not a cell but functioned as one. The thumb drive had already been logged into evidence. She'd made sure of that before they landed, handing it directly to Rowan with witnesses present. 12 hours later, Admiral Victor Drace appeared on base. Aria watched through the one-way glass as he conferred with the JAG team, his bearing radiating authority and controlled fury. Her interrogation started at 1,800 hours. 2 lawyers, 1 recording technician, and questions designed to build a case for everything from insubordination to treason. She answered each one with military precision. Yes, she deviated from the operational plan because it was designed to get her team killed. Yes, she used unauthorized communications because authorized channels had been compromised. Yes, she seized enemy intelligence without proper authorization because that intelligence proved American personnel were complicit in arms trafficking and targeted killings of U.S. service members. The lawyers didn't like that last part. At 2,200 hours, they ended the session, told her to expect formal charges within 48 hours, left her alone in the room with nothing but her thoughts and the camera she knew was recording everything. She looked directly at it. She spoke quietly about 20 years of selling out American soldiers for profit. Lieutenant Lisa Hale knew. They killed her for it. They tried to kill Aria and her team for getting too close. She paused, then continued that they got the evidence. Every transaction, every payment, every name. Another pause, longer. She stated that Admiral Drace thought he could bury this like he buried Lieutenant Hale. He was wrong, because she wasn't going quietly, and she wasn't alone. She stood, walked to the door, knocked. A guard opened it and addressed her formally. She said she was ready to go to her quarters now. He looked uncertain, checked with someone off camera, then nodded and indicated the way. They escorted her across the compound, past her own team, who straightened as she passed, past training units who had heard whispers, past Master Chief Rowan Hale, who met her eyes and nodded once. That night, unable to sleep, she stood at her window and looked out at the base. Somewhere in those buildings, people were analyzing the data Chen had pulled. Somewhere, decisions were being made about what to do with evidence that could topple careers and end legacies. Somewhere, Admiral Drace was planning his next move. But Aria Calder had learned long ago that the hardest battles aren't fought with bullets. They're fought with truth, with persistence, with refusing to be silent when powerful people want you to disappear. She'd survived 3 combat deployments. She'd survived an ambush designed to kill her. She'd walked into the monster's den and walked back out carrying his secrets. Whatever came next, she'd survive that too. The screen faded to black, and white letters appeared. 3 months later, congressional hearings would begin. 6 months after that, Admiral Victor Drace would resign in disgrace. A year later, reforms would reshape how military intelligence operations received oversight. But none of that would have happened without 45 seconds in a mess hall, when 3 recruits learned that the woman they tried to intimidate was someone who had stared down worse than them and won. Lieutenant Aria Calder received the Navy Cross for actions during the Arvani Ridge operation. She accepted it on behalf of her team, and in memory of Lieutenant Lisa Hale, who sacrificed 12 years earlier had started the hunt for truth. Master Chief Rowan Hale attended the ceremony. For the first time in 12 years, he felt something other than rage when looking at his daughter's memorial. He felt peace. 2 years later, Aria stood before new candidates. Among them were 3 women, proof the institution had evolved. Rowan watched beside her. That one, second row. She's got the look, that fire. After the briefing, Aria added words about earning respect through excellence. Rowan said, Lysa believed one person could make a difference. You proved her right. That evening, Aria thought about 90 seconds in the farmhouse that changed everything. She thought about 45 seconds in the mess hall when 3 recruits learned rank mattered less than skill. Admiral Drace sat in retirement, legacy destroyed. Justice delayed but not denied. Aria locked her office door. Tomorrow brought new challenges. Tonight, she was a SEAL who'd done her job. It was enough.